18 nays.
Strong bipartisan support for a plan crafted in the Senate. The deal brokered by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and Republican leader Mitch McConnell funds the government through January 15th. Republicans would have preferred longer. It raises the debt limit until February 7th and allows the use of extraordinary measures, though Democrats would have liked it to extend much longer. There's income verification for those who receive Obamacare subsidies on the exchanges, and it includes instructions for a bipartisan budget committee to address long-term fiscal issues by December 13th. Reid expressed the hope tonight this is the end of a difficult chapter.
Averting this crisis is historic. But let's be honest. This was pain inflicted on our nation for no good reason, and we cannot make the same mistake again.
McConnell acknowledged it's only a temporary fix.
There's a lot more we need to do to get our nation's fiscal house in order. Hopefully, once we've gotten past the drama of the moment, we can get to work on it.
A wild card in the Senate was if conservatives Ted Cruz or Mike Lee would try to hold up the vote. Lee called this process Washington at its worst, but allowed the bill to proceed.
It appears that this particular fight will end much the same way Obamacare began, in a last-minute deal negotiated in back rooms and forced on Congress and on the American people.
Speaker John Boehner said the House has fought with everything it has to convince the president to engage in bipartisan negotiations to address the nation's debt and providing fairness for the American people under Obamacare. Boehner pledged to continue the fight, and his fellow Republicans say they appreciate his courage.
The Speaker got a standing ovation. I think down to every man and woman feel like that our leadership team did an outstanding job.
Praise for the Speaker's leadership, and after 2.5 weeks of this fight, many lawmakers on both sides of the aisle seemed ready to move forward, recognizing there will be plenty of fights ahead on both spending and the debt. Brett?
Mike, there was a really strange moment as that vote was coming to an end with the House stenographer getting up to the microphones. Let's take a listen to this, first of all.
Sure.
No, it would not have been. The Constitution would not have been written by three Masons. They go against God. You cannot serve two masters.
Now, she works for the House, right?
Brett, both Steny Hoyer, the leading Democrat, and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the Republican who was in the Speaker's chair at that time, because she's a stenographer who works regularly on the floor. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen described her as normally a very gentle soul, and so it really shocked everybody when things are done by the book on the floor of the House, and suddenly there was this outburst at a critical time with this vote tonight.
Yeah, very strange. Mike, thank you. She said, "Thus spoke the Lord, and this is not the Lord's work," is what she said at the microphones. President Obama came out tonight with remarks that seemed to set the stage for the next steps in the budget process and for the second part of his second-term agenda. Let's check in now with Chief White House Correspondent Ed Henry. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. We're learning some new information this hour, which is aides here saying the president will, in fact, sign this bill into law tonight. There was some question about how quickly it would get here. Would he sign it in the morning? They're saying, number one, he will sign it tonight, and number two, the OMB director is now instructing all federal employees who have been furloughed that they expect them back at work tomorrow morning, just a few hours from now. Meanwhile, the president, in his comments in the briefing room, after days of his aides calling Republicans hostage takers and terrorists, he seemed to be clearly trying to change the tone.
Once this agreement arrives on my desk, I will sign it immediately.
Within minutes of the Senate vote, President Obama cheered the bipartisan action, though he was careful to set a measured tone and not further inflame House Republicans with excessive celebration before their vote. The president acknowledging in blunt remarks that both parties took a hit.
Because there's a lot of work ahead of us, including our need to earn back the trust of the American people that's been lost over the last few weeks. And we can begin to do that by addressing the real issues that they care about.
The president revealed he will make more extensive remarks Thursday, laying out his vision of how the parties can come together on a broader budget deal, though skepticism abounds.
And from a technical standpoint, it kicks a can down the road.
While the president seems to have won this battle, there are questions about how he can get the rest of his agenda passed over the next 3 years amid such a fractured dynamic. And though the president noted he wants to move quickly to other legacy items like immigration reform, that will be tough after a health care rollout that even Democrats are saying was botched. And back in the 2012 campaign, the president said if he won re-election, he would break the Republican fever of opposition to him. Yet it appears the most recent wrangling only fired up conservatives, who note America's founders wanted gridlock, and they now seem determined to continue that.
If Congress just gave a president everything he wanted, all the money he wanted, without any use of their own delegated duties, then basically we moved right back to a monarch.
The other complication for the president's agenda is that Congress's attention will be focused between now and December 15th on grappling with the bigger budget decisions that were simply delayed.
The good news is that we're going to get through this shutdown default situation. The bad news is it's only for 2 or 3 months. I mean, this is, as my father used to say, a hell of a way to run a railroad.
Although when a reporter asked the president if he and lawmakers will be in the same boat again soon, he turned on his heels and expressed optimism.
Mr. President, it's going to happen all over again in a few months?
Now, the president will be laying out what he sees as the next steps in this budget battle tomorrow morning, 10:35 a.m. Eastern Time. He'll be in the state dining room, a chance to get an idea of how he thinks he and this splintered Congress are going to pick up the pieces, Brett.
Ed Henry, live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. Deal or no deal, House Republicans were looking for a pound of bureaucratic flesh today over the shutdown-inspired closing of national parks and monuments, especially the open-air ones like the World War II Memorial here in D.C. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen reports Democrats did not care for that tactic at all today.
This hearing is a sideshow. It's political theater.
This is a Kafkaesque moment. I am taking part in a hearing that makes the McCarthy era look like the Enlightenment.
Like the geyser at Yellowstone, Democratic lawmakers spewed metaphors at House Republicans who took aim at Jonathan Jarvis, director of the National Park Service, for barricading some sites during the shutdown. Most notable was the initial blockade of World War II veterans from visiting the memorial in their honor. Jarvis acknowledged the Obama White House knew in advance about that.
Several times on the phone with the White House, I presented with the Secretary my decision.
Who did you talk to in the White House?
I actually do not know who was on the phone.
One Republican reminded Jarvis of the discretion he exercised 2 years ago when he declined to enforce no camping statutes against Occupy protesters in Washington.
Do you consider First Amendment activity to walk to a monument that you helped build? Or is it only just smoking pot at McPherson Square?
We are content neutral on First Amendment on the National Mall.
An officer of the Claude Moore Colonial Farm, a privately operated nonprofit tourist site, complained about its closure this month.
The farm has never been included in government shutdowns, as there are no Park Service employees at the farm, nor have there been since 1981.
If I may, the Claude Moore Farm has, since 2001, received $1.3 million of federal appropriations from the National Park Service.
Democrats argued it was House Republicans who effectively shut down the government.
They seem to love our parks today, but I haven't seen that love much recently since the Republicans took over Congress 2010. 2010, your total budget was $2,750 million. In 2013, $2,400 million.
Jarvis declined to appear until he was subpoenaed because he said the furloughs had hobbled his ability to prepare for congressional testimony. Then House Oversight Chairman Darrell Issa noted that Jarvis had never responded to a previous demand for 400 pages of documents dating back to April and slapped Jarvis with a new subpoena while the hearing was underway. Brett?
James, thank you. Up next, what one of the House Republicans who voted against the deal was thinking at the long end of this battle, and what's next?